Wobot can either invite you to engage in, maybe a technique to help you feel better right then and there in that moment, or if you're feeling pretty good, then Wobot might use that moment to sort of just tell you something really interesting, from a kind of core curriculum of concepts that is broadly mental health promoting. I think so. Wobot is as much a storyteller as he is a sort of an emotional support and guide for people. But it's based on concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think is, it's one of the best, it is the best and most supported approach to mental health that we have.
There are different mental health therapies or methods that are used.
Yes.
What made the cognitive behavioral therapy the method of choice?
It's crucial to sort of understanding how a Wobot works, and I really, I think a lot of digital tools that are available have been based on CBT, but they've always taken this side of CBT that's about teaching. And actually what Wobot did was really different. It was actually, instead of sort of teaching you something, let me show you something, let's explore it together, which is really the more of the flavor of what CBT is. So CBT's approach, cognitive behavior therapy, so cognitive stands for your thinking. So it's an approach that looks at your thought patterns, how you're thinking, what you're doing, that's the behavior part, and looks at how you're thinking about something or the things that you do every day and how that interacts with how you're feeling. So the basic idea is, look, it's not actually the day-to-day stuff that gets us down, it's how we internalize, it's how we think about that, and then how we might react in ways that sort of keep us in this place of like not doing great or not getting better or not, you know what I mean? It's negatively spiraling, and we want to be in a positive spiral. And so it could be often that simple. So what a great CBT coach could do, or this concept is based on stopping and looking and examining, okay, what is it that I'm doing? Or how is it that I'm thinking in characteristic ways? And a great CBT coach can facilitate that. But it turns out that a Wobot can also, in the moment that somebody is maybe feeling a little bit badly, can say, okay, so what's going on for you right now, in your mind right now? How are you thinking about this? And so just take somebody step by step through this process of seeing, like, maybe the way I'm thinking is not actually fully reflective of what's actually happening. It might be a bit of a darker thing, or I'm going straight to me, I'm blaming myself, right? Or I'm blaming other people, or I'm thinking I'm a loser. And, we all have these reactions. It's like a very negative critic kind of place. But what makes Wobot uniquely positioned to do it well is the fact that it's with you all the time, right? Wobot's in your pocket. And interestingly, the person who is most accredited with developing cognitive behavioral therapy, Aaron Beck, in his treatment manual, he actually suggests that clinicians should go to the houses of their patients to be by their side when they're confronted with some of these beliefs that about themselves and the world and other people that are inherently negative, so they can help you, talk you through them in real time. And obviously clinicians don't have the time to do that.
You mentioned something you can have in your pocket all the time.
Yes.
And so that speaks to technology and the advances in technology.
Yeah.
Have you been surprised by how rapidly AI has become a part of our daily lives? And do you see that advance in technology really influencing the approach that you have taken with Wobot? And it goes to your point about it's something we can always have in our pocket. And so are people getting comfortable and accustomed to that, utilizing AI for something like mental health?
I feel like we had already had that great leap towards things in our pocket with apps, right? Since app-based phones in 2008 or 2009, suddenly overnight we were very much accustomed to having the internet with us all the time, at least, and then apps that did certain things. Now, it was the infancy of technology. We had those apps did very specific things, and they did those things really well. Like think about the maps on your phone or something, like where we used to have to try and find directions or download them or write them. Now we could just use our phones to navigate there. I think what we discovered when we created Wobot was just how accessible natural language is as a way to interact with the great technology that we have in our pocket. It's just a natural thing to do, is to speak, because we're human. And so that's the biggest advancement, I think, with AI and recent AI, is that now we can just ask for things in natural language, in normal words, and be understood. And similarly, Wobot was able to really engage people in a dark moment, because not in spite of it being AI, but because it's AI. Because all Wobot had to do is say, "Hey, how's it going?"
You've also used some pretty interesting influences, I think, that inspires how that interaction take place. I think I read where the design was inspired by Star Trek or Dr. Spock and Kermit the Frog and friends of yours. I mean, how do these pretty unique influences sort of impact how Wobot functions or the functionality of it? I just thought that was a little interesting. What is it about Kermit the Frog that you felt would be vital to mental health therapy?
I don't understand how people just don't immediately understand how impactful Kermit the Frog was. I think, no, I mean, Sesame Street, legitimately, I think Sesame Street is just one of the most incredible innovations that we ever saw with TV. And it was, I think, the first time that creative people came together with psychologists to say, okay, how can we make something that is both engaging and educational in service of children who are at home all day, that are, I think something like they were watching dozens of hours of TV a week, right? And I think that's a very useful model for what we did. We sort of said, how can we take really amazing creative writers together with psychologists to make something engaging but also helpful from a human health point of view? I mean, Kermit as a character, he's just beautiful, compassionate. I love when you look, especially around the sort of early 80s, or kind of when I was a child, it's not easy being green, like very self-reflective, really struggled. Like he's a beautiful character as a way of, and he's actually portraying, quite in-depth, difficult things to a childhood audience. I think it was just, the execution was so beautiful. And so he's very, I mean, and I just love his voice. I just think he is, he's good. He's a brilliant model for what we do. Wobot is also sort of gentle and quirky, compassionate, also humble. Same thing with Spock. Spock, humble individual. What I love about Spock is, as a model of a robot, Spock was half human, and at least the way that Leonard Nimoy played him, it was that he shouldn't be like super robotic. He should actually be this Vulcan that is struggling with human emotions, and he does so in this using this observer mindset that creates distance between him. Beautiful model for the way Wobot should be. And so Wobot has this curiosity about human emotions, really trying to understand, but again, just always humble, polite. I thought those two characters were, they are really inspiring.
They are, but there's got to be a difference between the traditional face-to-face therapy and the uniqueness, which I would think has benefits as well as limitations in using Wobot. I mean, how do you compare Wobot to a human therapist?
That's the great question. And I think, it should be obvious that we're, the way that we're even talking about Wobot now, we very rarely talk about what kind of a character a therapist is. How are they showing up for a person? And that's because Wobot's really showing up in a very different way. it's not therapy as we know it. Like, it's very much not sit down and have an hour-long conversation. What Wobot did really well was remove the architecture, the current, what I call the architecture of therapy. You don't have to go to a clinic. You don't have to, right? It's not at a certain time or place. It by definition are a distilled set of skills that's based on what you might do in a clinic with your therapist, but is delivered in real time as you live your life.
But can you get the personalization with Wobot that you might get with a human therapist?
A human therapist is based on a human-to-human relationship. This is based on something that's very different, and I would argue we should not try and be the human therapist. It should be its own thing, because again, it's the AI that facilitates an engagement. It's very non-intimidating, right? We actually there's a lot of data that suggests data that we didn't produce, that people would rather disclose something to an AI than another human. Why? Because we know it doesn't judge. And also, we know that for certain folks that have been maybe underestimated, disenfranchised, or underprivileged, there's a kind of a sociocultural baggage that gets superimposed on them when they're seeing a therapist often, right? Because therapists are human, and that's not there with an AI. So it's this very different encounter qualitatively and also quantitatively. These are short exposures. So that is based on a skill that nonetheless brings a lot of warmth and empathy and compassion, but is based on, okay, let's see if we can help you feel better in this moment so you can go back to living your life. And so there's very little sort of disruption to one's everyday, day-to-day life.
I see one of the real values in using this type of technology is really expanding mental health access or care. When you work with, for instance, when you partner with healthcare organizations like you have with Virtua, I would think that it allows a therapist to really expand immediate access or reach and effectiveness when, to your point earlier about it can be in your pocket at any time. You may not be able to reach out to your therapist at 3 o'clock in the morning, but you can interface. Do you find that that's really where its effectiveness is, through collaborating with organizations like ours or others to really expand its reach?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we started making Wobot the character and making that Wobot, helping Wobot show up for people in a way that enabled them to kind of engage in very good skills for themselves. Now, when we go into these partnerships, we're now helping Wobot be a great assistant to the clinician. And what's beautiful about that, like, we know Wobot, currently about 80% of Wobot's conversations are happening outside of clinical hours.
So it's not meant to replace the traditional therapist, it is to augment.
It's to augment, and it's perfect hand in hand, because, the clinician, the clinician could see their patient, and the patient could go home and be practicing the things that the clinician has said in real time with Wobot. And one of the pieces of opportunity has been relatively underdeveloped before, and so we're really excited with the opportunity to work with clinicians on that.
So speaking of the ocean and